Good evening. It is Thursday, September 18th, and we are discussing The Whisper Sister by Jennifer S. Brown. And as always, I like to start off with, what does Jennifer look like? Wait a minute. Let's go to share. And I know which one she is. This is her, the one next to the book. So, she looks lovely. Whoop is it? And yeah. So I'll read you a little bit about here. I'm gonna stop share. And usually I say, wait, who? Where's Jesse? All right, do you hear the feedback? No.
Yeah, it was a little bit,
On
yeah.
now.
It is right. Jesse, you're listening through your hearing aids. So I just muted you. Unmute when you want to talk. I 6 years into Zooming, I have found out that people with hearing aids give us feedback. I didn't mean to out you on the hearing aids thing. So Jennifer S. Brown. She's also the author of Modern Girls, and she has some other books out there. That was a Massachusetts boy. She has a BFA in film and television from New York University. That's impressive. And an MFA in creative writing from University of Washington, Seattle. Also good. She's uniquely suited to write movie reviews. Okay. Now that we're mostly grown, she's catching up on the last 20 years of film. Jennifer grew up in Miami Beach, Florida. Ooh, we'll have to ask Rabbi Serrata. That's where he grew up. And oh, I just lost my which makes people question every winter what she's doing in New England. However, she finds northern winters fabulous for her two favorite activities, writing and drinking bourbon in front of a fire. All right. She lives outside of Boston, has two mostly grown children, and the goodest doggy ever, and a husband who pretends not to hear when she says she wants to adopt more. I usually go into why the name of the book, but I think that's evident. The Whisper Sister, because she was, that's what they called the women. And I think this whole time period was very interesting. I think her Judaism comes out throughout the book. And I also think, as I was reading, I thought, oh, it can't get worse. And then 2 pages later, it's worse. It can't get worse. It gets worse. So does anyone have any opening thing? Oh, Susan, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I did love the book. I thought it was really interesting. And it was one of these books that I couldn't put down.
Yeah.
And I had to read it twice because I read it so long ago. And then I had to read it again. And the thing that impressed me about it was the dishonesty through the whole thing. And the stubbornness of her mother. And the fact that as much as she thought her father was doing all these illegal things, and then she did exactly what he did. And to me, there was just a lot of lying in it, and a lot of she was taking examples from bad people. And that bothered me a lot. And I mean, I too had grandparents that emigrated from Europe in the early 1900s. And I had a set of grandparents that never spoke English. My father used to have to translate for me because they only spoke Yiddish. So I could identify with a lot of it, except for the dishonesty.
Mhm. Well,
And that
I do,
bothered me. It
yeah,
made Jews look bad.
right, which we're want to say, but I do think the foreshadowing with Duke, everyone kept telling her he's bad, and he comes to a very, very, very bad end.
Yes.
Um, and that was absolutely fascinating. Sandy, I'm gonna unmute you. Go ahead.
Well, it may have been a bad end, but I think everybody was celebrating when she was preparing the drink for him. We knew what was going on
Right.
because she had put that bottle in a special place for a special time.
Yep, she
I,
did. She
I
did. She
just
did.
wonder, first of all, a lot of Jews were involved in it. Mayor Lansky, we know what happened to him and
Hmm.
his decision, I think, to go to Israel, where he may have died there. But the Italians had their mafia and they lived through it. And the Irish had their shtick, whatever. We get through that. I just wonder if this story could be made into a movie. It seemed
That'd
like
be a
we
great
could see it.
movie.
You could see
Yeah.
it right in front of you. Every scene, you could
Yeah.
see it right in front of you as you were reading.
At the end, we'll ask who you would cast as the main leads here.
Okay.
And the only thing that I would say, and I listened to the Audible for part of this, was that she had a good accent. That, when you read when you listen to Audible books and A, they can't pronounce the Hebrew, B, they don't have an accent and they should, or C, they have an accent that isn't the right accent, that's always disconcerting. Merle, then Lynn.
I like the way she started out with one chapter that's about something awful going on in a tavern where somebody's trying to kill somebody and you have no idea why. And then she starts out with how they came to the United States. And what really impressed me is that it was so horrible what they went through. This quote, the stink of vomit and urine was suffocating. But what is her mother doing? Folding blankets and tidying. And mom says, wherever we go, we don't leave a mess. So you get the idea that this family is determined to succeed no matter what. And no matter what kind of chaos is going on around them, this family is going to succeed. So I thought the beginning was really good.
Yeah. Lynn.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Susan said about it was such a tough time. These people had to go through so much. And the fact that there were lies and the fact that there was deceit and the fact that there was all this horrible stuff going on was just their way of surviving because they had no other choice. They got to a point where they realized that this was the way the system was working. If they didn't jump on, they weren't going to make it. So, and I know that was the way it was with my grandparents. My grandfather, my mother's birth certificate, his occupation is peddler. He was a fruit peddler. So, but my mother tells a story about how when she was little, this is my mother's favorite story. She was the smallest, the youngest child. They would take her to this warehouse, and there was a transom in the door, and they would lower her into the transom, and my grandfather and his cronies would steal liquor from Al Capone, which I think they were lucky they didn't get caught, but that was her story. So, even growing up in those times, you can look back and think, wow, that was pretty awful, but it was really
Yeah.
awful,
And when Sylvia saves her, because she doesn't think about if she gets arrested, they're going to
Mhm.
deport her. We know how valuable American citizenship is, and I thought that was very poignant. And a story, can't tell Arthur, I told you this, that I tell all the time is, um, his mom was born in Romania, and when Arthur went to go apply for a passport, she says, "Just tell them I was born here." Like they're not gonna know where she's born. And people were, um, you know, she was embarrassed. She was
Mhm.
embarrassed, and there was nothing to be embarrassed about. And they spoke Yiddish to her parents, and look, her parents had the wherewithal to get them out before her grandfather was conscripted into the army, the Russian army or whatever it was at that time. So, I mean, those are all things to think about. The other thing that she used to do, she for sure, maybe my father-in-law was like, if there was literally a bite left of something, she'd wrap it in plastic and put it in the refrigerator. And I know they went through the Depression. I know they could have been hungry. And the
Mhm.
week after she left, I would just clean out my refrigerator of all the little bites she had left there. Initially, but I want to say one more thing. That Minnie and Max, Malka and Shmirka, their names were not changed at Ellis Island. They were changed in the classroom. And that is much
Mhm.
more realistic. The people at Ellis Island did not change names. But when people got to, in their communities and went to school, they didn't want to be different. And Minnie and even the two girls born here, Gittel, who was Gertie, and Louise. I don't think she had a Yiddish name. Initially, Minnie is disappointed by America. What do you know of your family's immigration story? If you're an immigrant, how did your picture of the United States match up with the reality of the United States? It's kind of interesting that we're talking about this now with ICE in the headlines daily, in Chicago, rounding up people. It's a frightening time. Susan.
So, uh, my my father also didn't have a proper birthday. He was born actually in a shtetl outside of Kiev, and which was Russia at the time. It wasn't. I mean, Ukraine was like a part of Russia, but it was
Mhm.
Russia. And so the only thing they knew, they thought that he was probably born at the seventh Hanukkah light. So at the time, apparently the seventh Hanukkah light was December 31st. So that's when they always celebrated my dad's birthday, on December 31st. Well, I was a very obnoxious kid, I guess, because I went to the Newberry Library and got a 1906 calendar, which was the year supposedly my dad was born, and found out when the seventh Hanukkah light was.
Of course you did.
And it was December 18th. And when I came home and told my father that his real birthday was December 18th, he got furious. He was so angry with me. I'm not changing things now. He was just, and I had a very loving father. And I have to say, my parents, my grandparents, they never relegated themselves to anything illegal as far as I know.
Yeah.
My grandfather had been a peddler in the old country, and he drove a cart with a horse, and they had to escape,
Yeah.
and they never went through Ellis Island. They went
No.
through Baltimore, and
But they had the forethought, they had the, um, you know, they thought about escaping.
they
Not
had to
everyone
leave because
escaped.
they had to leave because of the pogroms.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they knew they had, not
And
every,
this is funny. My dad's oldest sister, her name was Gittel, and she became Gert. Gertrude. So if you think I didn't identify with a lot
yeah,
in this book,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
Marilyn,
What I wanted to say when we're talking about the immigration in Ellis Island, my grandfather, my mother's father, came from Persia. That's where I get my little Sephardic, okay? And he came as a very young man, maybe even a teenager. And I believe that they were having really bad things happening in Persia back then. I'm not sure if pogrom is the right word to use, but when he came here, he wanted to be,
Pogrom.
yeah, he wanted to be a doctor. And he thought that he could just follow doctors around here like they did in the old country. Well, he
Yeah.
learned that was not true.
Yeah, no,
And later on in his life, in the 1920s, I think the late 20s, he became the Persian consul here in Chicago. I
Huh.
have no idea how any of that happened. I just know he was. And his name was Henry Nathan. Now, I'm sure that's not the name he was born with.
yeah, I'm sure
But-
it's not either.
Right. But when Persians came into Chicago and they went to the Persian Council, my grandfather was the one who gave them their American names.
Yeah,
Okay,
interesting.
when we were talking about that just before.
Yeah.
So that rang a real bell with me because I know. So from the time he wanted to be a doctor, he wound up for most of my life, because I lived with my grandparents, he worked for Westlawn Cemetery. So you
Okay.
go from one extreme to
Okay.
the other. Okay?
Listen, cemeteries is recession proof.
Right. And I just have to make one more comment. I thought this book was wonderful. I
Thank
loved it. And I bought it and I got it really early. So I started reading it and I said, oh my, I'll finish this book. I mean, I was eating it up. I was reading it so fast, I had to put it down and come back to it to finish it. But it was one of the best books I've read in a long time. I really loved it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sandy.
My grandparents came from some country. I never found out where. And whenever I asked my mother, she said, what difference does it make? It's all Russia now. But the story was that whatever country, there was pogroms and the Cossacks coming to take the boys into the Russian army. So there was an arrangement made between two families. My grandmother must have been 15, and maybe my my grandfather must have been about maybe 17 or 16. They just married them quickly and stuck them on a boat to America. And they wound up in Boston. I don't know how there wasn't Ellis Island at that time. But they wound up in Boston.
I'm sure there was Ellis Island, but not everybody went through it because that was the
Okay.
New York port.
Okay. Well, they wound up in Boston, had 9 children right away. And they then came to Chicago, excuse me, because like a lot of Jewish people in that time, this was 1881 when they arrived. In the late 1880s or 1890, they heard there's going to be a World's Fair in Chicago and there's going to be a lot of jobs. So they put my grandfather was a peddler, and on his papers that we found years later, it said he came here as a servant. That's what it said on the papers. That's how he got in. So maybe
Interesting.
somebody vouched for them to
I'm
get them
sure.
in.
I'm
But
sure.
then
sure,
they
sure.
came to Chicago
Yeah.
for the World's Fair. And from being a peddler with a cart, he then got a wagon, then he got a horse, and he became a foundry owner and he had a very successful life. But
Very nice.
years
Yeah.
later, when my mother was going to Israel for the first time, she was 65, they needed a birth certificate. So my mother, who had always been called Tilly, they get her birth certificate. And her name isn't Tilly at all. It's Toby. And she said, oh yes, my father said his best friend didn't like the name Toby. So he called me Tilly. And everybody after that called me Tilly.
Yeah. I think, names were much more fluid then. Okay, Evie, Elaine, and then Merle. Evie, go ahead. I unmuted you.
Okay, just a couple of anecdotal things. First of all, Susan, I think we could have been maybe twins or something, because listening to the story of your father's birthday, my mother, who was the only one of her many half siblings, she only had no full siblings, it was the only one that was born here, but her birthday was Hanukkah of December of 1907, December 15th, and we usually celebrated on Hanukkah. The other anecdotal story is my middle name is Kay, and I use that for business as well. But in Hebrew, it's Yehudit. And I could never really people used to question what I used to give my Hebrew name and so on and so forth. But one of my mother's half sisters, her name was Yehudit. And she had, I guess, long blonde braids and came to the to the United States, and they thought that she looked like a Katie. So that's how I got the middle name of Kay as opposed to the Hudit. So that's a little thing. And the other thing about names is my father came through Ellis Island. He was very lucky in 1939, and my maiden name was Rosenfeld. And so when he got through immigration, the person said, "Are you related to the President of the United States?" And my father, who spoke with an accent, but I guess fairly good English, said, "If I were, I would not be in this predicament." And so, those are the stories. But I mean, I really
Yeah.
also learned, I loved the book, but I realized how little I knew about the whole immigration, the whole thing about having to reapply for the passport. That startled me. If there was one little tiny mistake, and see all the forms that we make, that we get, between our own mistakes and AI's mistakes and everybody else's mistakes, can you imagine having to start all over again?
No, no. And she was, she had no one to rely on. That whole thing is very sad. Elaine and then Merle.
I really liked the book, and I really appreciated the explanation of the birthdays, because that was something my grandmother also, who came through Ellis Island, had a made up birthday, and she always would say, "Oh, my birthday was the week after Tisha B'Av." And so she picked a day in August, and it was really that the birthdays weren't important over there. This was all really good to learn, and I did love the twist at the end with Duke, because it was such a karmic kind of a thing. And I thought that was really good writing,
Really
and
good writing, because you
yeah,
didn't see that coming.
no, she was willing to go along with everything, but once he threatened the sisters, that was the last straw. And so I thought that was really good writing, but I could see the relationship with Leo coming, the rabbi's son, a long way off.
Yeah.
That he would be the good guy that she would end up with.
Yeah. Yeah. Merle.
My mother-in-law always had an anecdote about coming to the United States, and she said they had applied as farm workers. And my mother-in-law was from Odessa, and they were as far from farm workers as you can possibly get. It was a very sophisticated city, and it wasn't like that at all for them. But they had to do something to make it look like they were farm workers. So they were told that they should peel potatoes. They peeled hundreds of potatoes. They messed up their hands so that they looked like farm workers. And then when they got here, nobody checked their hands.
That's a good story. That's a good anecdote. I want to go to Louise and Gertie, the two little girls. Once they were given away, and this is in a time when adoption was closed, and even though they went to another Jewish family, did you think that she would ever get the two girls back? Sandy?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I was surprised that she went and found them.
And I mean, it was very poignant for me, and not being able to take care of your sisters, and she felt she let her mother down, and everything. Also, as we're going to the end of the book here, I was surprised that they didn't reintroduce the father back. Like, he's still in prison. We don't know what's going to happen with him. That's just the loop. We can ask her in when she comes in October. Marilyn.
I also thought that was very poignant and very sad for her, but
Yeah.
she just really felt deep down she had to see them to make sure they were okay. And then when they didn't even have their given names, they were given
Yeah.
American names, that
Yeah.
really bothered her. But of course, there was nothing she could do about it.
No.
But, getting back to grandparents and whatever, my grandfather was the only Persian that I know of. My grandmother was for sure came from what they called back in the day, White Russia. And my father's parents had died even before, well, his mother died when he was 14. I'm assuming they also came from somewhere in Russia, okay? And the fact that my grandfather married my grandmother, which was so completely out of my spectrum of thinking, that how did they ever get together, okay? But of course, we never ever talked about anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think
Ashkenazi
also,
and Sephardic, that's a mixed marriage.
oh, absolutely, especially at that time.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of wonderful Persian relatives. Most of them were cousins of my grandfather,
Yeah.
and they were wonderful, beautiful people.
Yeah.
But getting back to our heroine of the story, I think when it came to what she had to do with her sisters, I think she was really very desperate, and she
Yeah.
knew she couldn't take care of them.
Yeah.
And her heart was breaking, and my heart was breaking when she
Yeah.
had to give them away. I mean, that was one of the saddest things I think in the book.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, when she actually killed Duke, what a change in a personality and a way of living your life.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
running the speakeasy is one thing, but killing somebody,
Yeah.
even though I understand why she did it,
Right.
because he did threaten her sisters. Very
Right.
interesting writing. Very, very interesting.
And Elaine said that they foreshadowed her ending up with Leo. Also the foreshadowing of Riley. You knew that she wasn't going to get away. She scarred him. She, he thought the bar was his. She scarred him. So that was, you're kind of waiting for the other foot to drop on that one. And that was also very interesting.
It was very horrific is what it
It was
was.
all horrific. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well,
And I tell
Yeah.
Marilyn, my mahatenist, she's from Iran and he's from Turkey. That's my ex-son-in-law's parents.
Huh. Susan.
I forgot what I was gonna say. Sorry.
All right, stay
Oh, my-
unmuted and it'll come back.
Age is creeping up.
Hey, I mean, you're a participant. Occasionally, I'm up here and I'm like, and then when I think of something, I'm like, sometimes I have to write it down. That's why I write down when you put your hands up. Lynn.
Yeah, I was just kind of reflecting about how different life was back then and how just desperate people really were. And because my mother, my grandfather was a fruit peddler. He didn't make a lot of money. And she was very embarrassed about the fact that they had to get stuff from the Jewish charities. And, life was tough. It was a really, really tough time back then,
Yeah.
especially those people who had just come over and not knowing the
Is
language.
why it's like so concerning that they're taking away everyone's safety net now.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
All right, Susan, you remembered.
I
Go.
remembered. One of the things that I found very interesting in this book was at the end, I read the author's note.
Mhm.
I don't know how many people did that,
I did.
but it's very interesting how she came to write this story.
Yeah.
And she gives you a history of the 1920s in this country.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read it, I would suggest you do. It's very interesting.
Obviously she did her homework.
Yes.
Because all the gangsters and so on. Let's talk about the character of the rabbi. As someone who's a professional Jew, I kept thinking, I hope the rabbi doesn't go south, that he doesn't take advantage or whatever. And, he was a compassionate person.
Yeah.
He helped her out. I mean, she helped him out when she was flush, but I thought that, I thought it was a very positive characterization of the rabbi, and that doesn't always happen.
And I liked that it was non-judgmental.
Yes.
He was non-judgmental.
He accepted her for who she was.
Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you'd think at that time that he wouldn't have been so accepting of her. So I agree, he was very compassionate and very caring. And I think that helped her a lot get through some of the stuff that she was going through.
Yeah.
Because he was there for her.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
also makes you know that Leo is probably that kind of a mensch too.
Yeah.
And he's
Mhm.
Yes.
gonna, be the guy who hopefully will take care of her.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about religion. Religion is a point of contention between Faggy and Ike. Faggy believes in God and Ike does not. Minnie is caught in the middle. What do you think Minnie believes? And you know, at the beginning or at the end, why does she not feel like a real Jew?
Maybe because of the way her life was spiraling out of control to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Most young Jewish women at that time would not have done what she did, but she did it out of desperation to take care of her family.
Yeah.
So I think that came through pretty clear.
Yeah.
I think she was like maybe comparing herself to her friend Toiba. And, Toiba was covering her hair and wearing the long kind of dresses and she was not, she was wearing things that were more daring and more fashionable. She got her hair bobbed and she didn't cover her hair. But she was also not married. So I think that
Right.
women only cover their hair after they're married.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And she
Um,
also, she also was always comparing herself to her mother. And
yes.
there was no way, I mean, she was a child
Yeah.
when her mother died.
I was going to say she's a woman.
Mhm.
So here,
Yes.
saying Kaddish is super important. She can't say it. They have to get, they had to bring in however many men so they could say Kaddish. And I think, praying behind the mechitza. And I think they mentioned Eldridge Synagogue, which is a refurbished synagogue on the Lower East Side. It's really beautiful. We used to take our confirmation class kids there. I mean, it's really something, but they were in a little stiebel. But yeah, it's not like these mechitzas of today. It was behind a curtain that you couldn't see through. So
Right.
I don't, how you could be, part of the service or the spirituality, I just don't know. There's a giant synagogue in New York. It's called Lincoln Square. And the seating goes up like stadium seating. And the mechitza is glass. And they call it's in Lincoln Square. They call it Wink and Stare. And it's Orthodox and people go there to meet other people. But I find those, the mechitzas are claustrophobic. All the women are talking. I mean, most of them couldn't read. They gave them a book called Saint Arena, which was like stories of the Bible, which I would like to get a hold of to see what it's like, but it's in Yiddish. I'd have to find a translation. So, and Minnie did not read Yiddish.
Yeah.
So that means she
Really,
probably didn't read Hebrew and
it really resonated with me, the bit about saying Kaddish, because someone that I worked with for quite a few years passed away, and they were very observant. And I went to the Shiva, and when it was time to say Kaddish, they were like, no, no women. And it really bothered me. It bothered me a lot,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah. Occasionally we go to Mariah and it's in our neighborhood um and it's gotten just more and more right wing. And every time I go there, they always like, please come to our morning minion. We always need to make a minion. And I'm this close, you all know me, when you count me, I'll come. But until you count me, don't be telling me to come because you're not going to count me. And can you imagine being like the ninth woman and they're waiting for the 10th man and whatever, and you can't say Kaddish because they're waiting for 10 men. That to me is uh, right. Um, I don't like, and it's interesting because they were all Jewish, Duke, all of them, but I don't, the Duke obviously was, I don't think, very religious. Leo, of course, was, Ike was not. Uh, and that scene where they meet him as they come off the boat and they don't recognize him
Oh,
Right.
reminds me of the scene in Hester Street And if you haven't seen that movie, it's with Carol Kane. She was much younger and she gets off the boat and she doesn't recognize her husband because he's shaved and, doesn't have a beard, and everybody is surprised. And it's got to be so hard. It's not like they could make phone calls, or even, letters would take forever. So I just can't imagine that, the distances and how they still kept in touch, and he sent money back, and Ike loved her. He wouldn't say the name of the little baby of Louise, because she died in childbirth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just very, very sad. Oh,
It
Sylvia.
was like they always had to blame somebody.
Yeah.
There was a lot of blame going on in this
Mhm.
book.
Yeah.
It was always somebody's fault that something happened.
Yeah.
And he was
Interesting.
blaming the baby for
Yeah.
his wife's death,
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
which is
Absolutely.
ridiculous.
Right. And not
Ridiculous.
himself for having sex with his wife.
Exactly.
Obviously,
When the doctor kept saying she shouldn't be having any more children.
exactly.
But
Because
she wanted more children. She
I
didn't.
know.
She wanted the kids. She
I
wanted the
know, but
baby.
she had, let's see, Max, Minnie, Gertie, Louise,
Anshul.
and Anshul,
Anshul.
and a couple other miscarriages. I mean,
Right.
that's a lot to put your body through.
It's
Evie.
like Steel Magnolias.
This might be just a segue that you don't want to get into, but I'm a little disturbed. Maybe I don't know what the term religious means. Because, I mean, if you're gathering out all these 10 men, I mean, when did people even start to use that term? They would gather up the 10 men just to have enough men for a minion, but we use the term now, or maybe spiritual, or whatever the term is, but it's just such a term that doesn't make sense to me, because I don't even know what it means in terms of, and when people were considering themselves Jews in those days, and before we had the denominations, people maybe went to the steeple, the shul, whatever it was, whatever they called it, and so forth. But where they went because they were there, or called in, or something like that, or was a holiday. But I don't know if we use the term religious the same way we would now, or
So now, and even then, I would use religious in a spiritual way. And I think Faggy was religious. She put on the red band. She prayed to God. She two. And there's religious and there's observant. And I think that let's take, Rabbi Umansky was both religious and observant, because he prayed, and Max was observant because he would go to shul. He felt bad. He had a relationship with Rabbi Umansky, but I don't know. I mean, I can't tell from the book. We can ask Jennifer in a month. Did Max believe in God? And excuse me, that's where I think the term comes from. And that's how I use it in 2025. When kids say to me, or when I used to teach, you're like, well, Reformed Jews aren't religious. I said, that's not true. You may not be observant, but you believe in God, and and that makes that's what makes you religious. And so, but there's certain things, the minion thing, you to this day you can't get around.
Yeah.
Marilyn, and then Elaine.
When we were talking about going into a synagogue, a real, Orthodox synagogue, years ago, I had a cousin from my husband's side of the family, and her husband passed away, and they were very religious. She wore the wigs. Of course, I wear one now because
She
I
was very observant.
very observant. Okay. So when I went to the synagogue for, I think it was, I don't know if it was a service when he passed away, but I was there just one time. And they had like this wooden whole wall that was
That's a
blocking the
machitza.
men, yeah, from the women, and you couldn't see them, and they couldn't see you.
Mm-mm.
And I have been to a Chabad where one of my girlfriends, she and her husband go there, and I went there for something. And everybody's sitting around just like we sit in our Reform synagogue. They did not have any kind of partitions, nothing separating anybody from anybody. And this was
Was it a
Chabad.
service, Marilyn?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
But it wasn't in a real synagogue like what we have. It was something else. So they probably couldn't do it, but I was still a little surprised that there
Yeah.
wasn't separation.
Yeah. Elaine.
I was wondering about the red band. What was the significance of that? Was that a Kabbalah thing or what was that?
Mhm.
What does that
Right.
mean?
So, to this day, the red band is Kabbalah, and it is a minhag custom to give people money when they go to Israel. And you shouldn't say this, but I do. I said, don't give it at the wall, because those people are professional schnorrers. They're professional beggars, but they sell this red string, and it's for luck and it's for mazel, and so that your life goes on. And that's a superstition that's carried, through the years. And some swanky jewelry stores, have put like a red string through a gold bracelet or a sterling silver bracelet, and it's to ward off the evil eye. And there was a lot, when she says Kanahora. So the Hebrew from Kanahora is Kain Hara, against the evil eye. And that's why Faggy wouldn't talk about that she was pregnant. They didn't talk about, I assume they knew about cancer, but listen, that was, a couple years ago, my relatives didn't talk about cancer. You didn't want to invite the evil spirits in. And I think that if you look back in other communities of, I've read stuff about, historical England. They'd put things under the bed so the evil spirits wouldn't get in. There's a lot of that. If you read anything about midwives,
A knife under the mattress.
yes. So that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Paula, then Lynn. And Abby, do you have your hand up?
You see, stand with that other, yes, I did that motion. I didn't know what that was. Yeah.
When I had my first child, I came home to red ribbons tied all over the baby's crib that my mother-in-law had tied, and going back to the Orthodox separation of women, excuse me, Bob and I were on a vacation. It was during the year that I was still saying Kaddish for my father. So we went to the Friday night Shabbat dinner on the cruise ship. I stood up to say Kaddish and a man tapped me on my back. He said, "We don't count you here." I said, "Sir, we're in the middle of the ocean. This is not your temple. I'm not,
Good for you.
I'm not sitting down."
Right.
Wow.
Lynn. Wait a minute. I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Yeah, my system went down, so I'm on my phone. I'm not used to it.
Okay.
Yeah, my grandmother had been married twice. Her first husband died, and she had two children, which was my aunt and uncle. And then about 10 years later, she married my grandfather and had my mother and her sister. And their last names both ended in B. And they didn't tell my mother that they were from different fathers because they didn't want anybody to know about that. There was like, you just didn't tell people about that. And because my mother's name was Brenner and their name was Balling. And my grandmother just said, well, they were sick and we had to change their name because that would ward off the evil spirits. And so that was it, and my father had cancer in the 1960, and, people didn't talk about it really even then.
No.
So,
No.
yeah.
It's an interesting phenomena, which I know happens in Jewish families, and I'm sure it happens in non-Jewish families as well. But and I think today we're just, not only are we more forthright, but by talking about it, it educates other people and hopefully
Yes.
it helps them. Sandy.
I remember when I went to Hebrew school, in a very Orthodox shul. We didn't call it a synagogue or a temple, it was a shul. And it was a wooden, building. It was really old world. And my parents weren't that observant. They kept strictly kosher and everything, but they went there because that's where their family felt they were to be. But anyway, I remember when I turned about 10 and I left the women's section, the women were just gabbing all the time. They were talking. And the men were in front with the wooden mechitza. The men were praying. So I went up to tell my father something, but I was tall for my age. And this rabbi thought he was going to kill me, to chase me out of that section. And then when I became 12, I no longer was accepted in the Hebrew class. I was told to sit in the last row, last seat, and the rabbi never called on me, just ignored me. So my mother was really smart. She wasn't an educated woman, but she was smart. She took me to the Washington Boulevard Temple, where Rabbi Gunther Plaut was the rabbi. And
We're
she
lucky.
I
Mhm.
know. And she brought me there from Orthodox to most Reformed, where they had an organ playing. And Rabbi Plaut would call me up to the stage or the bima, and he would ask me to read the Hebrew prayers because the boys there didn't know them. He treated me as a girl, as if I was very special. I'll never forget that.
And listen, that's why I was worried about Rabbi Umansky, that it was going to go south, that he
Mhm.
would, you don't have a lot in literature, a lot of positive rabbis from that time period.
Mhm.
But let's for a minute talk about Sylvia. Sylvia and Minnie often got into trouble together, but Sylvia also helped Minnie. Do you consider Sylvia a good or bad influence on Minnie?
I'd say a little bit of both.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I
I
I
mean, I
liked
was
Sylvia. I
what?
like that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
liked Sylvia. I like that she got Minnie to be a little more lighthearted and have a
Mhm.
little more fun
Yeah.
because Minnie's life was very hard.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And she, at the end, she really saved her, by thinking, by going in um, to get, arrested instead of her. So I
Yeah.
just think that, that was. I also, and I want to share this with you as we're coming to, and I'd be happy to send this. When I send out the discussion for people who couldn't make it, but this at the end, the study guide that I found, it has all of the
Oh.
drinks she made.
Oh,
Grenadine punch, mock champagne cocktail. I thought there was some more. The Mary Pickford,
Mhm.
the Florida. I thought that was absolutely ingenious. And well, again, we can ask Jennifer when she comes, but I wonder if people did that. Obviously, some of that rot gut probably tasted terrible. So putting anything in it would make it
Mhm.
it tastes better. And she was ingenious, uh Minnie, by going after a different crowd, and that the women had to have a separate bathroom.
Mhm.
I mean, all of that was, and when they were describing the sticky floor when the bar when she first came in, that gave me the heebie-jeebies. How dirty that must have been.
Well, she wanted to class up the place, like
She
some of
did
the
want to
places that
class up the
Duke
place.
took her to, and she wanted to really upgrade it and bring women in and do all the things that she did. So I gave her a lot of credit for all of that.
Yeah, yeah. Evie.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you has seen on Facebook this Orthodox woman who was a labor and delivery nurse, Miriam. And she's constantly on. I guess maybe I must have subscribed or something. She's always on, but she's always giving little anecdotes about her life. And what does this mean and what does that mean? I mean, some of them are trivial, some of them are fun, some of them are so deep that I never understood. But one of the things that reminded me what she was talking about, she has, I think, 5 daughters, and this is
Yeah.
how we dress. And I guess they start to dress them a lot more conservatively when they're 9 years old. And I
Modestly.
didn't know, huh? Pardon me?
It's modesty. They call
Modestly,
it
thank you. I couldn't
modesty.
figure, yeah, and I couldn't, I can't remember the Hebrew term for it either, but I didn't realize that there was,
Sneut.
pardon me?
Sneut is the Hebrew.
Sneut, yes,
Sneus.
yes, because we had a friend who was kids were modern Orthodox, in West Rogers Park, and she used to come in from Canada, and her grandchildren would say to her that she's a nish sneut, kind of Hebrew Yiddish combination.
Yeah.
But if you come across her, she's really interesting. I mean, she really gets into the nitty gritty. I mean, the one that I saw yesterday was she was taking around her kitchen, and here's the milk, and here's the flake, and she opened up her dishwasher that they don't use, that is just for their children's snacks. And all the shelves are, I mean, she's fun to watch. So I would recommend, her name is Miriam, and she's a labor delivery nurse, and she wears a sheitel. No, she wears, she wears a, so I would look for her.
I will look for her. All right. If the family had remained intact, what do you think Minnie would have chosen to do with her life?
That's a very hard question.
Super hard question.
I mean,
I
what
feel
would she
like
have
she
done?
was on the road to going to school and being a secretary, and
Yeah,
it
that's
seemed
right.
like that was the road she was going down. And then she ultimately probably would have met a nice man and settled down. And what was sad about when she had to give up her sisters is if she had had a husband or a brother supporting her, maybe she could have just stayed home and taken care of them.
Yeah. Although it was creepy with Mr. Whitaker.
Job.
Oh
Yeah.
my God,
Good
that
job on
was
that guy.
so creepy, where he kept touching her and making passes at her, and you know that happened all the time.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
All
Real,
the time.
very real.
Yeah. I thought that was realistic, and I I mean, we don't know. We can ask Jennifer in October, but like, would she have been happy as a secretary, especially if she had these creepy bosses?
You know,
Would she, Sandy?
It's interesting because I wondered if she had some characteristics that were like her father. And had she not followed him and done the things she did, I don't know if she would have been satisfied doing the other things. It's like she had to, live wildly
Mhm.
and get that taken care of so she could go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. And then at the end, so halfway through the book, I Googled when was Prohibition over. Because I'm like, it comes to an end. And then you could see that it's winding down, that, and obviously, we'll ask Jennifer, but she gets to America, there's Prohibition. She finally, Duke dies and there's no Prohibition. But and then she had other hurdles, taxes, licenses, and again, it's all, I'm sure it was all mob controlled. And
Mhm.
I was just watching the news, and of course, when you read something, it just stays in your mind. But because cities have to get so much money to ICE, and because the government wants this, going after workers, and that's my bias. That's Vanessa saying that they have no time or money for the syndicate, and the syndicate is like, woo, they're super happy about it. So, uh, I've been thinking about that, and we've all
I
seen
thought it was a really interesting literary device to have her arrive in America the day that Prohibition started and
yes,
then close the book the day
Yeah.
that Prohibition ends.
right,
I thought that was a really clever literary
Right.
device.
right,
Yeah.
right. But I really want to know about the father. What happened to Ike?
Right.
That
I
should
mean,
be our
he could have
number one
gotten out
question.
early on good behavior.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. And I do think it's realistic that they didn't talk about in the letters home, he didn't write about what was happening. You can only imagine, only imagine, the terrible conditions at the time in the prisons, and she had to send him money.
Yeah.
Oh, and then when she found out she was overpaying Duke,
Ah.
that was the
Oh,
last
whoa.
straw. I was like,
That was definitely the last straw. Boy, did she get upset about that.
as well
That
she
was everything.
should. And those are all
Yes.
good. Andy, I was going to say you've been so quiet tonight.
Uncharacteristically so.
Yes.
So Paula and my father, when we were little girls, owned with our uncle taverns on the south side. And family lore says that my father, because he went bald very, very young, he was able to get a liquor license
Oh,
before he was even old enough to drink.
wow.
So you can imagine the graft that was involved, that
In
couldn't have
Chicago?
really-
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And family lore was that the taverns did very well for a while, but then there was it's on sort of the south side, not that far from Chinatown, that there were Irish bars, black bars, and who could go on what side of the street
Yeah.
and what side of protection.
Yeah.
And when I
I-
read this book, they never told us much about it. And by the time we could really understand what was going on, he was in other businesses and doing other things. But I can see probably some parallels.
Paula.
Also, when my dad was a child, my grandmother opened dry goods businesses, and he went to 8 different grammar schools. He was born in 1920. So they were busy moving around from neighborhood to neighborhood every time a business folded. She was the immigrant, they came as immigrants about 1907.
Yeah.
And she was like, we were talking, just she learned English. She wore the pants in the family and did everything she could to support this family.
Yeah. You can really see the struggles that people
people
went
had.
through, and even just doing the wash, cleaning the floors, going grocery shopping. Oh, when she got hurt and she had to go up 4 flights of stairs. Usually I could just run up 4 flights of stairs. Well, she was young.
Right.
I mean, it was a hard life, and it's interesting because I think about, people in Israel, and they are a little bit, they can be a little bit behind us. It's a hard life there. It's a hard life in Israel. And it was a hard life then. And, obviously, I think we're very lucky for where we live and how we live. And we're really fortunate. So it's 8 o'clock, and I just want to show you. Jennifer Brown will be here in October, and I will send out a an email. But the next book after that is it's really a memoir, Ayelet Sabari, Songs from a Yemen Israeli Legacy. And if you have Kindle Unlimited or you get or Audible, it was free for me, or maybe you could get it on Libby, and she reads the book. So it's really great. And you see, she's a young woman, and we'll find out about her life because although she's 52. She was born in Israel, and I'm 99 that she does not live there anymore and lives in Canada and goes back and forth, so on and so
What's
forth.
the name of the book?
Songs for the Brokenhearted. I
Oh.
will send it all out tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was a
Again,
great choice.
Howard, you didn't say anything. Do you want to say anything?
Sure. I was thinking maybe you can ask Jennifer. Maybe Ike is the follow-up book to the Whisper Sisters.
I was thinking the same thing. I usually ask that. We've had authors on. I'm like, what are you working on? A couple of them are like, I can't tell you. I'm like, we are your bread and butter. What do you mean you can't tell me? But they don't want to, like, I'm going to go run and write Ike's story or, whatever it is. But that is a very good question. We will have to ask her that.
Well,
Indeed,
just my only comment is I like Minnie, number one, because that was my grandmother's name.
Oh,
And number two, I thought she was so gutsy, throughout the book for what she did and how she handled all these difficult moments.
yeah, I agree with you. Do you think it was realistic for the times that she was so gutsy?
Mhm.
Yeah.
She didn't have a choice, I guess.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, for her, it was the only thing she could do to survive.
Yeah.
Survive.
Shana Tova. I hope I see you all at High Holy Days. You can still come in tomorrow if you haven't picked up your tickets, or they'll, obviously we'll have the tickets at a table before you come in, and you'll hear more from me. And if you were not, you're going to get a virtual link. And last week for Slichot, Cantor did songs by Leon Cohen. No,
Yeah,
Leonard Cohen. I was close. Leonard Cohen. It was really beautiful. And it's all on the same link.
It was fabulous.
It was fabulous. Yes.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Shana Tova.
Tova.
All
Happy,
good
healthy
things.
New Year, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.